hello everybody, happy Friday and welcome to this week's live stream straight from AVADirect Studios. I'm Joe.
And I'm congested.
Well,
and I'm Gerard.
Okay, well, I mean, we'll find out soon enough just how congested you are and whether that's an actual sickness congestion or that's just your thought process.
Both.
Okay.
A little bit of both.
Fair enough. But do remember, we now no longer have the need to construct additional pylons. So we're going to open up this week's live stream with what everybody is probably talking about. Well, no, not probably, they are. And that is the release of the RTX 2080 Ti and 2080 benchmarks. How did they fare out? Well, it's the 2080 Ti is faster than the Titan V, Gerard, so that's good, right?
Very good, very good. 2080 is a little disappointing, though. Just a tad.
I think everybody's hung up on the price point differences, which,
yeah.
I mean, that's understandable. As a gamer myself, you always like to see the direct translation in between the previous gen card and the next gen card, and you want them to be close in price. But I think after being in this industry for as long as I have, you start to realize that's not going to happen because you're going to see a price delta for new tech regardless. That's how anything is. You know, for example, I bought my Samsung Frontier watch, and it's 3rd gen. And now Samsung has a Galaxy watch that's coming out, but it's packed with a ton more features. And although that's something that we don't plan to discuss on this live stream, just to give you a little bit of a comparison, it is priced $50 more. You're going to get that delta. But,
yeah,
I mean, you got to keep in mind that the performance gap that's existing is due to the fact that drivers have not been optimized, right? The technology overall is brand new. We've never had cards that were designed to function in ray tracing environments on the fly.
Right.
I mean, what do you think, Gerard? Do you feel like these deltas, as it stands, with the current performance are worth that price delta, or do you kind of feel like it's worth waiting for?
I think so. I think with the 2080 Ti at least, it's worth buying now. The 2080, however, I think we can wait. We kind of saw this with the 1080 Ti a little bit when it launched. Performance is kind of subpar compared to previous generation cards, but with driver releases coming out soon and further game optimizations, not to mention DLSS, which is a wonderful feature that we're going to speak about later. It's going to improve performance greatly. You know, that gap is going to become much larger between the 2080 and the 1080 Ti as it stands right now, because currently we're looking at what, a 5 to 10 FPS difference in most games.
Just about. Most. Yeah, 2080 Ti gets to about 20 in some instances, but it's rare. I mean, especially if you look at like some of the Grand Theft Auto 5 benchmarks out there, and the one that I saw, there was maybe a 9 frame per second difference between the 2080 Ti and the 1080 Ti, and that's kind of disheartening.
Wasn't there like 1 or 2 games on there too that were outperformed by the 1080 Ti as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like optimization plays a big factor. It's not just the technology that goes into it. It's also, you know, drivers and optimizations that play a big part. And I think further on, we're going to see some big bumps.
Yeah, and I mean, you also have to bear in mind too, man.
Yeah. A
lot of these games are just engraved in previous gen optimization in terms of graphics performance. You know, these games have been around for a while. I mean, in my opinion, it all started with the Maxwell cards when they started to realize how to optimize rasterization without much of an impact in performance, right?
Right.
And then you go from the Maxwell to what Pascal was, essentially. They've had enough time, by they I mean developers, they've had enough time to really optimize things and gear them for graphics cards. I mean, you gotta remember back in the day, I don't know if you remember, you know, because you're a youngin' compared to me. But back in the day, developers came out with games and they did no optimizations for specific cards, and it was up to the hardware manufacturers to make their tech to align with what games were doing. Now, over the past decade, we've seen developers actually develop their games on specific cards, on specific platforms, and they work best in that environment. And that's why you'll get games that look beautiful and they run great on like mid-tier cards like the GTX 1060. And at that point, there's really no performance gain by going with anything other, especially if you have said developer developing that game on GTX 1060s. That's kind of the point. You know? That's where I think there's a lot of those graphics card requirements for VR. Everybody is gunning for the X80 series from any generation, previously the 10, to optimize performance in VR, and that's why it's a staple in VR performance nowadays.
Yeah, most definitely.
But, you know, we'll see what happens with the 2080s and the 2080 Ti's, the RTX series. And, you know, I'm wondering, what do you think they're going to do for the lower tiered cards?
Well, it seems like they're probably going to be dropping the RTX moniker for those.
So, oh, really?
Yeah. So What it's looking like is the lower end cards, such as the 2060 coming out and the 2050, those are most likely not going to be supporting ray tracing. They're not powerful enough, you know, and for the price point, it wouldn't be really worth it for NVIDIA to put all those fancy features into those cards.
Makes sense as to why they don't want it to be RTX then, because that's a little misleading.
Right, because, you know, RTX ray tracing. They're probably going to be dropping that moniker for those cards, and they're going to stick with GTX for those. It's highly possible. I mean, you know, their executive VP at one point even stated that they'll start with the ray tracing cards on release, which kind of implies that the cards below the 2070 are not going to be ray tracing cards. So it wouldn't make sense for them to keep the RTX moniker on those at all.
As long as they're going to optimize things, if we're going to see the opposite of what we've seen with the release of the RTX series and that you're getting more value for the price point compared to previous gen, all about it. And for all we know, that could be NVIDIA's great play here. Maybe the RTX series cards were designed to get the industry familiar with that tech, to get developers interested in investing in that tech moving forward. And then they're going to use this opportunity to refresh Pascal and make it extremely affordable and viable to build very simple budget-conscious PCs packed with great performance. Well, what always excites me every time they do a refresh is that means that they're going to take previous gen tech and make it smaller. Either pack it on a refreshed nanometer process, maybe they're going to reduce the size of it. You know, when the 10 series first came out, we had 1060 cards that were mini, and they were only, you know, they were about 7 inches long, which is the typical size of a standard slot card. And that excited me because now you can build tons of mini PCs that had the performance of close to a 980 from previous gen. You know?
Yeah, so more than likely it's probably going to be a Pascal refresh. We might even see the 1080 core inside of the, what is it, GP104?
Yes. Inside
of the upcoming 2060. I think if NVIDIA's pattern holds true that they've always done, more than likely that's going to be what happens. And, you know, with that, we'll see 1080 level performance at, I'd say, about a $300 price point.
That would be great.
Which would be very nice, yeah.
That'd be great. And now it kind of makes sense why NVIDIA stated a couple of weeks ago that they were going to hold on to Pascal allocation until the end of the year. Or at least that was what was reported, right? No official statements made there, but that's what reports were pouring in with. And that kind of makes sense because, I mean, I'm sure there's tons of those cards still in allocation to begin with, and they want to get rid of them.
More than likely, yeah.
So you'll see budget pricing, you'll see pricing conscious listings for those cards, I'm sure, throughout the year as we draw to a close of 2018. But it's also going to get people more interested in that level of performance and getting used to that as they start to optimize the RTX cards. So I'm okay with the refresh as long as there are benefits to go along with it.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
And as long as they don't try to bump the price up as much as they did with the big, RTX cards.
Well, you know, Gerard, the only way that would happen is if we got a surged increase in mining again.
Let's not talk about that.
Why? Why? You need to get your feelings out there. You need to talk about it. You need to get it off your chest.
Look, I was able to beat the mining rush when I bought my 1080 Ti's. I remember trying to obtain more.
I'm sorry, did you say
work.
Octane more?
Possibly, potentially.
Yeah, and then what did you end up doing with those 1080s?
I sold them.
Why?
Because I had expected the new cards to launch sometime around June, and the mining rush was still a thing. So I figured, hey, you know, make some extra money and buy the new cards. Well, whoop-de-doo, they didn't launch for another 4 or 5 months.
The level of disdain on your face makes that story worth hearing.
Yeah.
On top of the fact that you had approached me earlier this week, you're like, hey, so I canceled my pre-order for the 2080. In the back of my head, I'm like, yeah, you're that disappointed party. And then before I can even get a word out, because I pre-ordered the 2080 Ti, I'm like,
yeah.
I didn't quite know how to feel about it, but it's okay, to each his own.
Yeah.
And hopefully that additional 9 frame per second in GTA 5 works out for you.
Well, no, note that I didn't pre-order it. I'm just waiting to order it once they allocate new ones. And, you know, that's the other thing, too. They kind of pushed back the launch date, you know, by about 7 days. So that shows that they're kind of doing poorly in terms of allocation.
Yeah.
So hopefully when the time comes for me to actually buy one, the availability won't be reminiscent of, you know, the 1080 and 1080 Ti's availability during the mining rush.
You know what,
that
though?
would be a disaster.
You know what? With availability aside, as it relates to the mining rush, I think ever since, from what I remember, the GTX 500 series cards, ever since those cards, there's always been a period of time where allocation is super tight.
Yeah, yeah,
know?
no, most definitely.
So that's just what we're used to. I think we can kind of get past that to a degree. But I have a feeling with these RTX series cards, people are going to be a little patient because there's still some optimizations that need to be done.
Right.
So I'm going to go ahead and read through some comments real quick. Rudo from YouTube. How's it going, Rudo? Good to see you. Mirror Pleb games are not ready for RTX. And GTA 5 is 5 years old, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not wrong. And RTX is way ahead of its time. I think that's kind of the general message that everybody is getting. And it's more or less you're investing in tech that just isn't, it's not at its prime.
Right.
It's like when 4K monitors first came out. They were ridiculous prices. Nobody was paying it out the gate, but people got them anyways in expectancy with it to grow over time, and it's just a steady, slow pace at this point. Oh, believe it or not, Joe will qualify for AARP next year. Man, I hope so. Man, do I hope so. And just
Free
Christmas.
breakfast. Free breakfast at Denny's or
Yeah,
Labor
I mean,
special.
Christmas would be every day. We'd have to wait till the end of the year. And yeah, low profile 1080s were Rudo. That's true. The low profile 1080s were great, and they still are. Or 1050s. So maybe we'll see some low profile 2060s. Maybe single slot. I want them to bring back a day and age when you could get high-end cards single slot.
Didn't they put out single slot brackets for the 1080 Ti? I thought at one point, or
They did,
Yeah.
and they're still available. But I remember even that was like a staple, even for companies like EVGA back in the day when the 88, the GTX 8800s were a thing.
Yeah.
They made their design to be single slot bracket, so then like you could have EVGA release their SwiftTech branded block, and it was all single slot. So if you wanted to stack 4 of these right on top of one another without having to worry about the dual width space
Right.
in a case, then you came to the right place.
That would definitely be nice to have again, especially if you're running stuff like sound cards and network cards alongside your GPUs.
That's true. And that was at a point in time when like Killer Networks came out with their Bigfoot cards, and people were like, oh my God. Because it was only like 10 meg and 100 meg NIC controllers on boards.
Yeah.
So, see what we have here. AVSC, do you guys think we're going to see many 2.5 inch slot 28 Ti's, 2.5 slot 2080 Ti's, as we saw 2.5 slot 1080 Ti's? Oh yeah.
More than definitely. Yeah.
I mean, can't really say a whole lot officially, but it's bound to happen, especially with manufacturers such as Asus and Gigabyte coming out with super improved heat pipe designs for their heat sinks that take up a decent amount of space. That's bound to happen. You know, it's the nature of the beast if you're looking for a card that has exceptionally better cooling than what you'll find from stock coolers or from the blower style coolers. So yeah, I don't think that's going to go away until we get to a point to where TDP starts to exceed or starts to decrease the necessity to have these big honking heat sinks on graphics cards.
Right.
So you got to bear that in mind a little bit. I don't think they're going anywhere.
And not to mention with how high of a TDP the new cards are, we're most definitely going to see, I think, even more, like way more, 2.5 inch slot, 2.5 slot cooler cards.
Right.
On these series.
Right. Same individual as well also says EVGA was the worst this generation. Even the mid-range 1080 Ti's were super wide. It makes multi-GPU workstations a lot more difficult. Very true. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason why we started to see a lot more of that is due to the fact that SLI configurations have not been predominant for the last 2 generations of cards. You know, SLI optimization started to take a drop because we were seeing graphics cards that were capable of running games at high frame rates with a single card to begin with, at least enough to appease the industry. Am I wrong?
No, you're correct.
So I think that's the reason why manufacturers like EVGA started to come out with super wide cards. It just wasn't a focus for them. But yeah, I do agree. You're always going to get companies or institutes that require multi-GPU setups just for the simple fact that they're doing things to where SLI optimization doesn't matter, that they can actually see the hardware for what it is installed in the system and utilize it. A lot of Linux-based applications are that way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in that application, you really don't even have to worry about SLI or even drivers to begin with, because sometimes, unless you're looking at Ubuntu, optimizing drivers and or getting driver support in Linux kernels can be a major pain with some NVIDIA cards.
Right.
So bear that in mind. So, you want to pay that premium for a single slot? I mean, for Quadro? No. Rudo? I really don't. Quadro has its own application to begin with.
Right. It's a workstation card through and through, so I mean, you're not going to be seeing it much in the mainstream. And I mean, if you're buying it, you're not going to be concerned with the premiums realistically because you're going to be working with it. It's going to be making you money 90% of the time. So
what he said.
Yeah.
Money and the return on your investment is the name of the game with Quadro cards.
Exactly.
Not to mention, there's a small amount of applications for creatives that really force you into the Quadro space. A lot of it can be run through GTX cards. You'll just lose out on certain nuances from Quadros. So like for GTX cards, you have G-Sync, but then with Quadros, you have Quadro Sync. And that's huge for companies that have a wall of displays, for example,
right.
And they want to sync the frames across all those displays seamlessly. That's where those Quadro cards come into play. So for like huge, like venue-based visuals, Quadros are going to be your source. And you could try to hack something together with GTX cards, but it's the fact that they're not designed to do that from a hardware standpoint, it's going to be a headache. And then at that point, as a business, it's worth paying that premium for a Quadro card.
Yeah, not to mention they're all, raw processing power. You don't have any of the extra frills holding them back. It's pure power. I mean, it's perfect for stuff like graphics design and rendering. I mean, so it's definitely worth the premium. I mean, the amount of stuff you can do with them from a professional standpoint is just insane.
It is. Absolutely insane. Now on to a slightly different topic. Well, vastly different topic, but also equally as depressing as some of the security risks we've run into with certain processors. Newegg has somehow allowed their customers to have their data vulnerably hacked and obtained for a month straight. How might you say? Well, these are the guys that were responsible for hacking British Airways and Ticketmaster in UK.
Yep.
You remember hearing about that?
I remember that. That was a big fiasco.
It was a mess.
Yeah.
And basically what these hackers did was they planted a script during the checkout process, so you literally just handed over your information to them.
Yeah.
Newegg's response? Why don't you go ahead and make sure you monitor your bank account, so if you see that there's a couple tens of thousands of dollars off, you might want to call your financial institution.
Thanks, Newegg.
Yeah, do you think that's even a viable solution to this? No, like, hey, we got this, we're gonna take care of it, we're gonna find these hackers, and we're gonna egg their houses, or we're gonna key their cars, to kind of get more on the vengeful aspect of things. No, it's just watch your bank accounts if you don't already.
Yeah.
How does a company like Newegg, better yet, how does an IT representative within that company, how does the IT department not see things like that happen?
Right.
I mean, granted, I understand. You're always going to find, as a company, as any company really has to bear in mind their security, you're never going to be able to completely prevent hacking. You can only make it more difficult. But that goes both ways.
Right, no, exactly.
Hackers can develop ways to obtain or break through exploits in anything, but also make it just as difficult for you to see said exploit.
Yeah, and you'd think too, with a company that large, a retailer of that massive of a scale when it comes to the tech space, not to mention they're all about tech, so there's not much of an excuse. You'd think they'd, like you said, they'd notice something, they'd see something, or better yet, they'd even find a solution to take care of the issue other than, hey, make sure your bank account's locked, change your password, you're good. Right.
I mean, my initial thought process in that regard is like, nope, I'm going to burn everything that's associated with the purchasing process for me and Newegg, and I'll just start from scratch. But of course, Newegg, as a company, doesn't want to have to tell consumers to do that, because you're basically saying, put in all this effort and work, okay, for our mistake.
Yeah.
For us dropping the ball. Well, the ball just happened to be a big flaming sphere of money. So congratulations.
Yeah.
Let's check out some more comments. I have to use AutoCAD. I used to have a gaming GPU. Then they dropped support for it. Now I have a Quadro, and that's from ADubs. And that's the thing. I mean, that's what developers are doing, software developers. Sometimes they have no choice, though, to be honest with you, ADubs. I've worked with a plethora of different professionals and individuals that work with AutoCAD, and sometimes there's just no choice, especially if, for example, let's say AutoCAD wants to optimize the way in which it renders things in real time to reduce the amount of time you have to wait for that image to appear in front of you in clarity. And the only way they can do that is by using some sort of quality or feature that Quadro cards have. They have no choice. Or maybe they have two sectors of developers within AutoCAD that are focused on support for Quadro and support for GTX. And maybe when it comes to developing with Quadro, what would normally take them a couple of days to implement and iron out, it takes their GeForce department or the department in charge of handling support for GeForce cards 2 weeks. As a company, then you start to look at the scales and you go, hey, most of our sales are from people that buy Quadro cards, and a small percentage, we'll say 10% for argument's sake, are only using GeForce cards. Monetarily, that makes no sense for a company like AutoCAD to continue to invest time in implementing support for GTX cards.
Exactly, yeah, and not to mention with how often they switch up those cards, and how frequently the new generation of cards comes out. It's a lot of work for them to go in each year optimize for new cards over and over and over again, as opposed to just going and redoing their Quadro cards every once in a while.
Yeah. Well, Maruto is a good point. Fair concern. The Quadro 8000 starting at 20,000. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But the way that Quadro and P&Y have explained why that's of value is that this card is apparently capable of doing renders similar to high-end systems, either in a render farm situation or just a super high-scale server that's got tons of cards in it, of $120,000. So those cards are going to be designed for companies that are doing some serious rendering that would normally put together a budget of $60,000 to build a render farm. Just so you know, back in the 90s, when they rendered Toy Story, it took them something like a render farm of 30-some PCs and about 45 days for the final render of that movie. Wow. When they created it. That's how long it took Pixar to render the final cut of that movie. So the point is, you're taking something that you normally have to invest $60,000 in and you minimize it down to 20. And we used to actually work with a company back in the day that was doing the same thing with film effects and editing. They had software that they had optimized that would allow you to save upwards to like $40,000 of equipment and get an $8,000 workstation with their software, designed for their software.
Wow.
So that's what they're trying to do. And that's something a whole lot of people don't know about. And to be blunt, it's because companies like that, like Quadro, and they don't invest a whole lot in educating beyond just sending out press releases and putting the products up there on their page.
Right.
They rely a lot on individuals like us, like system integrators, and that's something that we need to make sure that we are knowledgeable on so we can advise our customers on the appropriate solutions. A lot of our competitors just don't have a focus in working with professionals. They're mostly gaming.
Yeah. That's where we kind of branch out a little bit. We do servers, workstations, everything, you name it.
There has not been a project that I've ever said no to.
Yeah.
We'll put it that way. Every project that has come my way, I've done simply because, A, I love having the opportunity to work on different things. I mean, that is our wheelhouse, that we don't do the same stuff over and over and over. Unless, of course, we have a customer that is just buying preset configurations for specific intended uses that don't change.
Right.
But, I mean, I've built anything from systems and form factors that shouldn't exist to cutting open power supplies and tapping into the 5-volt and the 12-volt lines to power proprietary devices in systems that are specific to our end-use customers. So I'd say being educated on Quadro is just a no-brainer, right?
Right.
Oh, there's more comments.
Oh, geez. Who'd have thought?
Yeah, A-dubs on the comment of AutoCAD dropping GTX cards is that the GPUs do better for that application the most part. Which one, though, in AutoCAD? Because I've known some AutoCAD applications where Quadro cards work best and GTX cards don't, and vice versa. So it does go both ways. That's kind of like Photoshop. If you go on Adobe's website, they're going to blast the Quadro insignia all over the place and recommend it for professionals. But realistically, because of the way the graphics cards are utilized in things like After Effects and in Photoshop, all that really does is allow you to apply your real-time effects like blur and like motion effects on the fly and see those effects take place right in front of your eyes, as opposed to if you didn't have a dedicated graphics card, it would have to sit there and render for you to see it. Quadro cards and GTX cards are the same in that performance front.
Yeah.
You ever tried editing anything with GTX cards?
Yeah, actually I do all the time. But
really?
Before I even got into PCs, I was doing VFX just as a hobby on my laptop and stuff. Then as soon as I got a beefier PC, the first thing I did was benchmark it, by rendering some files out in Cinema 4D and all that good stuff. So it's definitely, there is a similarity and there's also a difference between the two. It also, like you said, Joe, it depends on the task.
Yeah.
realistically, but they're one and the same.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Woo! I didn't order anything between the dates. Newegg said they got hacked. I don't have credit card info on their site. Am I still good? Yeah.
Yeah, more than likely.
Yeah, this is only people, as far as like the Newegg breach, this is only people that have actually put their payment information in. Like credit card, addresses. They only went after their payment information though, so that's, it's not like, you know,
Excuse me.
these hackers. You're fine. It's okay.
I'm dying.
It's all right. Well, we'll make sure that we try to finish the live stream before that happens.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't get your contact information, just payment information. They just want your monies, not to see where you live.
I mean, maybe they do want to see where you live. Maybe you'll get a knock on the window, you know, in the middle of the night, just, psst, you're asleep?
Who's there? Newegg hackers? Newegg hackers? Another point that somebody had made, that if you're using the same password under Newegg as you do for other things, probably change that.
Yeah.
And I might have missed it in the article that I read, but I didn't see really anything as it relates to Newegg telling people, like, we advise you to consider XYZ in this situation. And I mean, I've seen smaller companies get hacked for data or payment information, and they have like a full laundry list of like, here's everything you should do just to be safe. Newegg was like, watch your account. Watch it. Would you look at this? Look at this. Just look at it.
Just keep an eye on it.
Sometimes you just have to say, would you look at this? Look at this. Anyways, some other interesting news in the industry.
So, looks like Intel's 14 nanometer CPUs may experience a shortage.
Bum, bum, bah. I think we kind of all anticipated this, though.
Yeah. Apparently what's happening is basically their demand is being bumped up to a point where the supply cannot keep up. So it looks like fabs that were expected to be producing the 10 nanometer chips, which were supposed to be out, 2015, are now having to retool for 14 nanometer to keep up with demand, which is going to cause further delays because retooling takes a lot, and I mean a lot of time.
Yeah, it's not a matter of just taking a design and slapping it on a different fabrication and just going, okay, time to go.
Yeah. And the problem with that is, too, with how long it's going to take and with the supply being as short as it is versus the demand, the prices are most likely going to go up, just like what they did with RAM and just like they did with graphics cards.
No!
We are living in a period of time where stuff just gets expensive.
It's really probably not a big deal, honestly. There's shortages happen. I mean, there have been far worse shortages in the industry, like, you know, when memory manufacturing plants set fire. That was bad. How about the great hard disk flood of 2012? Jeez. That was awful. I mean, you were paying $400 for 4 terabyte hard drives. Not a problem anymore, obviously.
Right.
Thank you for fate in the improvement of the manufacturing process in that regard, and also precautions against floods. So we're good there. I mean, but really, I kind of feel like the shortage is not going to be any worse than when you have new processors that release, or as I've said earlier in the live stream, new products.
Yeah, it's probably not going to be very extreme, but the problem is it's probably
was that a touch on the Intel series? Is that?
It can be.
Is that what you're doing? Any relation?
Probably not, but it can be.
I see what you did there.
We'll just call it purposeful.
Okay.
Anywho, the shortage probably isn't going to be too terribly bad in terms of price increases, but in terms of actual availability, I think it might be. Like I said, retooling does take a lot of time.
Yeah.
And then with the whole, JP Morgan situation, which is buying up a lot of demand. You didn't know about that?
What situation? JP Morgan?
You don't know about that?
No?
Oh, yeah. They are demanding a high quantity of CPUs from Intel.
For what?
I have no idea. I assume for workstations.
Is it top secret?
Probably.
Do we need to dig into this further?
Probably not.
Yeah, I don't see how it's worth our time.
But anywho, that combined with the shortages is probably going to make availability a little bit difficult. Like I said, price increase too. It's probably not going to be major, but availability is the big word here. It's going to be tough to get our hands on some of the 14 nanometer stuff that's out right now.
Do you feel that this may cause other shortages? Do you feel that this may just be limited to CPUs, or is this going to affect other aspects of Intel's business?
I think it's limited to CPUs personally, But I do think it's also going to ultimately cause a shortage in 10 nanometer and a further delay because, once again, they had to retool 10 nanometer fabs for 14 nanometer. So when they get ready to finally transition over to 10 nanometer, that's going to be an even bigger delay because they have to retool back to 10 nanometer. And yeah.
Bleh. Bleh.
Yeah.
Bleh. That's how we feel about the shortages. But if there are other things at play here, if there are other components that may be affected, then it may not matter. And I mean, in the world of the PC industry, people really have no choice but to wait because there's always this huge buzz around new hardware and refreshes and new innovations. Like, it's just as simple as if you want it, you wait for it. Oh, and pay for it too.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. Speaking of Intel, the Intel i9 9900K reportedly had Cinebench scores leaked on video.
Yeah, and oh man, it's a huge performance bump over the 2700X, 18%. But here's the kicker: it's overclocked to 5 gigahertz.
Okay.
So 18%.
Just for the overclock itself, not even at stock.
Yeah. So I'm wondering what stock for stock is going to look like. Now these are also not confirmed leaks. These are purported leaks, you know, but it's, I guess, from a fairly reliable source. I believe, if I recall correctly, it was leaked by a famous overclocker.
Right.
So I'd imagine that they might be accurate, but if we're only looking at an 18% increase with a fairly sizable overclock over a stock 2700X, I don't know. Is it going to be worth it? Is it not? No.
Well, look, here's the thing.
Take on it?
I have no problems with Intel. They are a fantastic company. They're a great partner of ours. You know, we do a lot of things with Intel. I just don't think that is necessarily representative of some of the things we see, especially Intel being as big of a company as they are. It's kind of difficult to control what everybody does, right? And Intel's kind of made a name for themselves for, I don't want to say necessarily faking benchmarks, but boosting benchmark scores through overclocking and not really being very transparent about it.
Right.
Right? And I think this is really nothing out of the unusual. However, granted that I know that these scores were all based on multi-core applications to show multi-core performance, I think what it's really going to come down to is a core-for-core comparison, because you have AMD that always focuses on core count and optimization of usage of said cores, but Intel always wins the race with single core performance, hands down.
Yeah, transistor density is their big thing.
Huge, and that's very important.
Yeah. And keep in mind, like you said, these were only multi-threaded test results. These were not single core tests.
Right.
So performance on that is currently unknown. But hopefully once those CPUs come out, we'll kind of see a much bigger gap than just that sort of 18%, because they need it. I mean, AMD's been catching up to them.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, AMD's getting there, but it's good because it's great for competition. I think Intel is obviously more than willing and up for the challenge to compete with AMD when they have an actual tangible product. Because let's not forget, for a while, people kind of felt that AMD was up to something only because they felt so absent from the CPU race, and then boom, out comes Ryzen, and we're like, okay, here's a real tangible product. And then Threadripper, and they were just like, okay, so how are we going to approach this? They just need to keep it up. 100% they need to keep it up.
Because it was, what, 3-4 years between the FX launch and the FX 8350 and the Ryzen series, the first one?
Right.
Intel
so far has demonstrated that they have fantastic engineering capabilities, and that's not to knock AMD at all for their Infinity Fabric design. I mean, Infinity Fabric on paper looks amazing. I just think they need to optimize some of its usage when it comes into practice, when it comes from practice into actual use case scenarios, and I'm sure they'll get there. It's AMD. You know, they've been at this longer than Intel in most cases and in several scenarios.
Yeah.
But the way it was explained to me was that if you think about Intel's engineering and what they're doing by constantly optimizing the current nanometer process, it's like you have somebody that has a very thin ballpoint pen, and they're drawing the transistors and the design of it, and it's very thin and it's kind of sloppy, right?
Yeah.
And then you have, with Intel, they have a big, thick ballpoint pen, and the fines are real thick, but somehow they're able to keep that line neat and steady and then pack it into that same space that thin ballpoint pen did. And that's where what comes into play when you say the transistor density is huge, and they're still just optimizing it, making it smaller and smaller and smaller. That's impressive.
Yeah.
So me personally, I can't see what I can't wait to see what happens when we start to get to the 10 nanometer and the 7 nanometer process.
And that's the big problem, is trying to pack that stuff in is what's really causing those delays.
Yeah.
Because silicon has its limits.
It does. A-Dubs has a great question. They just need to know, is it soldered?
Probably not.
We'll just have to wait and see. I mean, we had that rumor in the live stream a few shows ago that people were reporting that it wasn't soldered, and that it was soldered. So,
yeah.
Don't know yet.
Realistically, I think the soldering's probably going to be more so reserved for the Extreme series, but it's up in the air. I mean, they may be realizing, hey, the thermal paste that we're using on the heat spreaders is just subpar.
Some of these comments, man.
Yeah.
Twitch, Bulldogs 1922 says, tell Gerard Walenciej I say, hey.
Hi.
Do you know Bulldogs?
I have no idea.
Do you want to try to sanction a guess as to who Bulldogs is? Is that your mom?
I mean, my mom wasn't born in 1992, so I don't think so.
No, but maybe that was like the favorite year of like model cars that came out. So 1992 holds a special place in her. Which, by the way, did your mom ever get a hold of you?
No, she did not. But
that's a shame.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Bulldogs. I don't know. Sounds familiar. Maybe Zach. I don't know. Not AVA Zach.
No.
Yeah. Sorry, Bulldogs. I don't recognize you, man. But hi.
Wow. Well, thanks for your effort to say hello to Gerard, who apparently has no idea who you are.
I'm sorry.
I don't really think you are. Really don't think you are. Much like the way in which Gigabyte is not sorry for putting out an M.2 drive that goes up to 512 gigabytes. Now, Gerard, I know you are particularly excited about Gigabyte's M.2 SSDs.
Excited is a word. I don't know if it's the right one, but they're putting out an NVMe-based drive. Price point's kind of unknown at this point, but they're only putting up to a 512 gigabyte drive out. Now here's the kicker. It's NVMe-based, but it only has a 1,100 megabyte per second sequential read and 500 megabyte per second sequential write on the 512 gigabyte model.
What were those numbers again?
1,100 megabytes per second sequential read and 500 sequential write.
Okay,
for the 512 gig model, and then a 1,200 megabyte sequential read write for the 256 gig model, and an 800 megabyte sequential read for the 256 gig model, which is fairly low for NVMe, but
that's not bad though, dude.
It's not bad. No, don't get me wrong.
It's not bad.
It's still way up there compared to SATA. But
what's the price point on these things? Was there a price point?
It's unannounced. That's what I was kind of going to get. That's what I was kind of going to get into is if the price is right on those are
come
probably
on
going
down.
to be. Oh. If the price is right on those, it's probably going to be a killer drive for the price point. But if they try to price it similarly to, say, like a 970 Evo or other NVMe drives in those size brackets, then it's, for those speeds, it's not going to be worth it at all.
No.
Now, Gigabyte can put out good stuff if they want to. And I think they definitely have potential with these M.2 drives. They just need to price it correctly, and they will succeed.
I hope so, because Gigabyte makes great products, another manufacturer that we work with. And the goal here, people, is to take a look at that product and recognize where its value is going to be. If you're going to be an individual that's just going to compare new products that come out to the highest tier product available, i.e. 970 Pro SSDs, of course it's not going to be as good.
Right.
The price is going to be the tell here, okay? Because much like what Crucial does, Crucial is just absolutely dominating flash storage space when it comes to budget options, and now Intel is with their 900p drive that they came out with recently. Let's see where this Gigabyte M.2 puts them in terms of their price point. Because, really, the read and the write, that's not bad. Typically, when you have drives that are a budget contest, M.2s, they have a similar sequential read and write performance to SATA drives, and then it kind of makes sense.
Right.
If this has SATA drive-like price points, but with NVMe-like speeds, kind of mid-tier, Gigabyte has a product. Gigabyte has a product, and do I have a solution for you? Until then, though, we're not going to know. I would say probably for like a 128, or even we'll say a 256, because that's kind of the minimum nowadays.
Right.
Put that at like an $85 or a $90 price point, and you got something. I think. Maybe.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if the price is right, the price is right, and those drives will be worth it. But
Trent?
Trent?
Do you know a Trent? That's Bulldog. It's Trent saying hello to you. This is awkward.
I'm gonna be honest, man. I don't.
Well.
I'm sorry.
Yep. So am I for putting everybody else through this. This is embarrassing.
You can.
I'm just gonna
Just keep going.
I'm just gonna, you know.
Anywho,
This week on AVA's live stream, Gerard Walenciej is thrown to the wolves as he can't even remember a friend's name or who they are. News at 11.
Anywho, today's weather forecast: overcast with a chance of congestion. Back to you, Joe.
And that's the news. Anyways, on to the next
My
topic.
foot over.
Oh, well, now your foot's congested with pain and suffering.
You're welcome.
We're going to do some AVA news because why not? Here to officially announce the refresh of our avatar system is not Gerard, me. So we relaunched our avatar system. We posted a video about it. It's up on our YouTube. It's on our Facebook. So feel free to give it a like and a listen. But the greatest thing about our new avatar refresh is it's the same form factor. So it focuses on micro ATX, right? But darn does it look pretty. I mean, hot damn. Look at them lights. Look at the blues. And the greens and the reds. It does support RGB. We just like to keep things blue.
That's kind of our theme here, in case you couldn't tell. You know,
Like, we don't have a red carpet that comes out of our building. It's a blue carpet. And there's no red tape in our office. It's blue tape.
yeah, exclusively blue.
But nobody ever feels blue because that's a negative association.
Now, Joe,
We usually just say they feel red.
talking about the blue theme, but you got a little something going on here.
that isn't blue.
But it's Death Star tech support. It's Death Star.
Traitor.
Anyways, Avatar. So usually goes for about $2,500. We are doing a special promotion for $2,300. We're taking $200 off, throwing caution at the wind, throwing our money in the air and letting it just fall to the wayside for you to pick up and apply it to your purchase. So feel free to do so at any point in time. It's VR ready. It's liquid cooled with the help of Corsair's closed loop liquid cooler, and it's overclocked. To what? That's going to vary on what you choose. We offer a mild and an extreme overclock. Do you want a 5 to 10% increase, or do you want a 15 to 25% increase? That all comes down to you. We're going to give Asus a shout out for their support. We're going to give Corsair a shout out for their support in helping us develop different designs to the avatar before we came to a conclusion and released it. And go ahead and stay tuned for our YouTube reviewing of the avatar. So that's happening this weekend. Yay! Gerard, what else we got going on in AVA news?
Well, we have the Intel Octane bundle going on.
And when is that going to expire?
The 30th of September.
No!
It's your last chance to get up to $610 in software with a purchase of a system with an i7.
That is in a couple weeks.
Yeah, a couple weeks.
So hurry up. I mean, this is a huge value. It's literally for the price of something so tiny. So tiny. $600 worth of software. I mean, come on. Just buy an Octane drive just to get the software. I mean, literally. You could do that.
You could. You actually could.
Right? Makes sense. 9 days, A-dubs, you're right. Lee and Lee, I mean, we can do that. If you like the avatar, but you want it in a Lee and Lee PC, we can do that. Again, I'm going to repeat myself like a friggin' broken record that we can build you any PC you want. If we have these Avatar Signature Series systems, it's because we put the time and the effort to create a product that is easy for you to purchase based on the fact that we implemented proper design and cooling and component selections. But if you like everything we've done, but you have a preference to see it in a different chassis, or maybe you want us to put it in a shoebox.
Listen, you're getting a little fancy there. Shoebox?
I know. I'm just pulling out all the stops.
We can do it in a moving box.
All of it. We can go get a U-Haul box. We can cut holes in it. We can slap the motherboard in it and test it. Make sure it's grounded properly to the cardboard.
Here you go. No, but in all seriousness, the PCO11 dynamic, that's a case we can definitely do, and it's a fantastic case. So, you know, you can hit up our wonderful salespeople, i.e. Joe, and get something going.
Yep, that's the thing. That's why we're in business. We cater to everybody and their needs and their desires, and we don't force you into any specific options, no matter how much you don't like them, like some of our competitors do. And just let us know. Literally, all you have to do is just start a dialogue.
Yep.
You can call us. You can even text us if you want to, if that's easier.
Email,
right? You can
snail mail.
Snail mail if you want.
Knock on the door.
My direct number, for the sake of people having it, is 216-503-6361. You can call or text that number. Call me anytime. And I'm always available, even in my sleep.
At all hours of the night?
All hours of the night.
Even on the weekends?
You can call me the Midnight Visitor.
Wow.
So,
you're here to hear, folks.
No excuses.
Call Joe at 2 a.m. while he's asleep.
please do. So, I mean, the Intel Octane, to touch on that subject a little bit. I know that's was the topic of conversation for us live streams ago. Basically, what that will do is it's just a separate resource for random access memory, RAM.
Yep.
RAM. So if you were to, let's say, take like 8 gigabytes of memory from a budget system and drop that down to 4, that's when you could use Octane to boost its response times, and it will actually act as if you have more memory in your system.
Yeah, which is neat.
Very neat.
And it'll also work vice versa with hard drives.
Really?
If you have a hard drive,
Really?
it'll boost the performance of the hard drive to something closer to what an SSD would be.
Wow.
Yeah.
I see another comment coming in. I'm going to wait for it. So this is in relation to the 2080 Ti. Benchmarks are good. Oh, Bart Lavesseur from Facebook. Benchmarks are good, but price is way too high. Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, we're in agreement with you. And it's kind of interesting because I saw a review that was written about these cards, and the immediate reaction to this review was that reviewers just fail to recognize the fact that the price point is just not reasonable to most consumers.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to say that as a system integrator, I understand the reviewers aspect of it. Like, well, yeah, there's going to be a price delta. But us as human beings and consumers, we are generally able to pick up on things when there's a difference in nature to any situation, as it's been long-standing. And by that I mean, as new cards have come out, I don't ever recall people complaining about price points a whole lot. It was kind of like, it's reasonable. NVIDIA especially has been very good at gauging prices on release of new products. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, aside from the 1080 Ti, I think the 1080 Ti received some complaints, but
a little.
Not as near what's going on right now.
No. But I mean, there were big performance gains for the 1080 Ti.
Oh, 100%.
And it was still cheaper than the Titan X Pascal, which didn't always outperform it.
Which one? Because there's two of them, remember?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's the Titan XP.
And then there's Titan XP.
Wait. What?
There's the Titan X, unofficially XP, and then there was the Titan XP Pascal, and then there was also the Titan X Maxwell. So really there's 3 Titan X's, 2 of which were pretty much very similar.
Yeah, and then there was also the the Jedi Order.
Yeah.
And the Empire versions of the Titan XPP. Titan XP, XPP, Titan X Pascal. But I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with the comment that the price is way too high, and the fact that there is not really a whole lot of reviewers, if any of them, or serious reviewers out there willing to say that. I mean, I can only say this based on my own statements, my own personal statements on this show, right? As a system integrator, overall, we, as a system integrator, the pricing is fair for the technology and the direction they're going, but you can't always expect consumers to be on board with that.
Exactly.
As consumers, we just, hey, new tech, faster cards, cool, what's the price point? No, pass. And of course, as consumers, you have the rights to not buy it, but I think that's kind of a lame excuse. Like, oh, you don't like it, don't buy it. Well, it's like, no, that's not the point. The point isn't that I feel like a manufacturer owes me anything in terms of pricing. It's, if you want to sell your product, you need to price it appropriately. So if us as consumers are trying to tell a company, dude, that's unreasonable.
Right.
maybe listen. Just saying.
Right, exactly.
Super saying. I'm going to talk about something that's pretty exciting to me. Hits me right in the feels. And this isn't gaming news. Sony Entertainment of America is releasing a PlayStation Classic console. Where did this come from?
Right?
How? Like, everything that that Nintendo talked about in terms of a mini, it kind of segued into this. And Sony's just like, hey, by the way, PlayStation 1 mini coming December 8th, which happens to be my birthday. It's meant to be. Boo-hoo!
Just wait until they're out of stock, though.
I will stab you with that pylon.
Do it.
I don't want to hear that nonsense.
End my misery.
Don't put that hate on me, Gerard. Don't do it. No. It's going to include 20 different games, one of which is Final Fantasy VII because reasons. Right.
Right.
Tekken 3, a myriad of other titles, which I really don't want to get into the specifics of because you could likely figure out what Sony's smash hits were on the PlayStation when it came out. But it does come with 2 controllers. And I want to know.
That are full size, unlike the console.
I actually, to believe it or not, I really wish that they would release mini.
Mini controllers?
I really wish they would release mini controllers because I have a 3-year-old that loves to play the Nintendo Mini and the Super Nintendo Mini, and sometimes she'll just like put the controller down and then just like use her pointed fingers on this stuff because you can tell her tiny little toddler hands can't wrap around the full controller. And as sad as this is, I kind of remember that challenge because I was her age when when I first played Nintendo. You know, in the 90s when the dinosaurs still existed.
Yeah.
And it was a struggle for me.
When Patrick Swayze was still alive.
Oh man, you had to bring the Sways into this?
I did.
Oh, that's so Swayze. Man.
It's grounds for disqualification right there, Joe.
Why not just download an emulator? Because that's illegal. You can't do things like that.
Not to mention you can't exactly get that nostalgia feel from an emulator like you can from, you know...
This is true.
A reproduction or, sorry, you know what I mean, a reproduction of an existing console.
Yeah, this is true. A-Dub's Raspberry Pi is better. Well, that kind of plays into the whole emulator aspect, right? There is a Linux kernel that is optimized specifically for running emulators, right?
Right.
And for the record, there is nothing wrong about owning an emulator. It is only the games in which you try to obtain. You can play around with an emulator all you want, just you can't obtain games in any unofficial means. That is illegal, and we do not condone that. I mean, plus and support game developers, dude. Like Nintendo and Sega. Like you're telling me, like as a 30-year-old man that has nothing but nostalgia-driven memories of playing those consoles all the time because I was a loser with no friends, like I will give them my money to replay those games in a better way. That makes sense for today's technology. Yeah. You know? Or bear in mind, if you own a collection of Genesis games, it is not illegal for you to use those games through emulators if you own them.
Right.
This is true. Because you're not stealing. You've already purchased. You own the rights to use the product, so you can use the product in any way, shape, or form that you want. And Bart has a good point. Sony's doing it because everybody's doing it. Mini Genesis, Mini SNES, Mini Neo Geo. Man, I forgot about the Mini Neo Geo. Did you ever play Neo Geo, by the way?
No, I did not.
Do you know what Neo Geo is?
Yes, I do know what it is.
Okay, yeah. I played it for a little bit. My brother went through a period of time when he had nothing to spend his money on, so he just started like buying retro consoles off eBay, and he picked up the Philips console that retailed for $800. I can't remember what it's called, but Philips came out with their own console, and it was $800, and it was competing with the Super Nintendo. It had the exact same graphics engine as Super Nintendo, 16-bit, but on CDs. So you had actual like motion video, and you had audio that contained actual instruments and recordings, and not like that bleep blop beep bleep blop beep blop 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 bleep blop blop beep blop blop that Nintendo and Sega had at the time.
Right.
So it was not 8-bit. Spyro or Crash Bandicoot on that list of games? Man, James, I hope so, and it's great to hear from you, man. Thanks for joining. Oh, here's a list of games right here. Look at this.
There we go.
At the help of Brooke. No. Never mind. Epic fail. But now we're going to get that list. We're going to wait for that list before we move on, honestly, because that's kind of more important to me right now.
They don't have a full list yet.
What do you mean they don't have a full list?
There isn't a full list.
Get a full list!
Nope.
Oh.
Announced
Really?
That was according to IGN.
Well, I mean, none of the mini consoles have online functionality, though, right?
I thought the mini SNES, or mini NES did.
No.
No?
Did it?
I thought it did.
Mine doesn't have like a wireless or like an Ethernet jack.
All right, never mind. I guess I'm wrong.
I mean, that'd be neat.
It would be.
So, well, James, I mean, I think it would be pretty stupid of Sony to not have Spyro or Crash Bandicoot on it. You know, Sony could have done something a lot different this time around, and it would have blown everybody away. What if they released that PlayStation Mini, but it wasn't the original games? They were all reboots. Every game on there had like improved graphics and like an improved frame rate. If it was a game that had a kind of a sketchy frame rate, that would blow everybody away.
I think so, but I think it would kind of annoy everybody because I know a lot of people who buy those nostalgia-based consoles also want them in their original state. They don't want the games altered in any way, shape, or form. So I think that kind of would be a double-edged sword.
Oh, Bart, answer my question for me. Philips CDI. Is that it? It was very expensive, $800. It was awful, absolutely awful. Man, did I not like that?
Yeah.
Anyways, Bart is very, very thrilled to bring you the next topic in gaming news.
Did you just call me Bart?
Did I call you Bart?
You said Bart.
I'm gonna call you Bart now. Bart, do you wanna tell us what our next topic is?
Anywho, Fortnite has
No. Let Bart speak.
Oh.
Go on. We're waiting.
You ready? Anywho, Fortnite has been cited in more than 200 divorces.
I'm
since
sorry, what?
January of 2018. Fortnite has been cited in 200 divorces. A petition in the UK, which took a polling from 200 different 4,665 different couples as for reasons for divorce, found that 200 of the couples, which is 5%, cited Fortnite as a reason, among other things. Obviously, most of them weren't the main reason for the divorce. This is following after the World Health Organization back in June recognized gaming disorder as a mental health condition. So I guess those two kind of go hand in hand a little bit. It's kind of amusing because you always hear people, complaining like, "Oh, my boyfriend doesn't give me enough attention," or "Oh, my girlfriend doesn't give me enough attention," because they're playing Fortnite all the time. And here we go.
It literally led to broken marriages.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Everybody who's had a divorce because of Fortnite. I don't see PUBG doing this. PUBG doesn't create divorces.
Exactly.
This is just my bias.
Probably because nobody plays PUBG much anymore except for me and you.
I haven't played PUBG in a while.
Yeah.
I have not. I want to, but it's just, biggest cause of divorce since Modern Warfare 2 came out. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
James, you're not wrong in the slightest. Wow.
Oh, man. I mean, geez, Modern Warfare 2 is going to be a big reason for divorce now as well, since it's backwards compatible again. So people on Xbox One are playing it a ton.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Fortnite's kind of the easier game to pick up, I believe, and that's probably why it's so popular, and that it's more fast-paced. And matches don't last 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So there's that. Getting close to the live stream here, but we're going to run through a few more gaming news portions. The next topic of discussion. Team killing in Rainbow Siege now results in an instant ban. Now, is it a perma ban?
No, it's a temp ban. So it starts off with a 30-minute ban. Now the thing is, it used to be team killing would result in a 30-minute ban, but it would be after 2 or 3 kills. Now they've bumped it down to 1. They do not take team killing lightly anymore.
Really?
Now that's in and of itself a bit of a double-edged sword. So here's the deal with it, right? Oftentimes in Siege, I find myself doing this more frequently when I'm playing with my friends because they are all fairly incompetent.
You're a pretty big Siege player, right?
I am. Oftentimes, you'll be spraying somebody down, at the other end of a corridor, and all of a sudden your teammate walks in front of you and dies.
Oh, see, you can't help that.
Yeah, you can't help that, and it happens to me very frequently. In fact, most of the time, that's how my team kills are. It's accidental. Right. Now, the problem with that is, with them banning on the first kill, is that can be abused by trolls. You can be sitting there, spraying somebody down, if you get into an argument with somebody or somebody just wants to screw with you, they'll walk into your line of fire and purposely die just to get you banned. And I have
Why would you do that?
And I have had that happen to me firsthand.
Why?
Because
just for the hell of it?
Because people are terrible. So it's definitely going to be abused. I can see it being abused, and I can also see them kind of bumping that back down. Now, the offenses scale, right? So on the first team kill, you'll get a 30-minute ban. After that, it goes up to 1 hour, then 2 hours, then 24 hours, and then a full week. Now, there is a timer that resets, as there always has been, but it's unspecified as to how long it is now. Apparently they slightly adjusted it. I can only assume that the timer is about 2 weeks long.
It should be longer.
Probably.
If you get yourself banned 5 times in a row, I mean, come on.
Probably, but the fact that they said slightly, and I think the ban before was just a week, or so the timer just before was a week long, I think that it might, excuse me, might be only a 2-week increase.
Okay.
So, or sorry, 1 week increase to a total of 2 weeks, but that's just what I think. That's not the official specified timer length.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I just kind of feel like they need to have a little more control over it in the sense of determining whether it's like a legitimate ban reason or not. Yeah. You know, like PUBG after a while when people were hacking in a big way and they were cheating, they gave you the ability to kind of determine what makes you feel like you needed to report them so there could be an investigation. I could only imagine that Rainbow Six Siege may have a similar way for you to report people.
They do, but the thing is they don't really do much with it. The report function is about as useful as, well, it's about as useful as a left turn lane on a roundabout. It doesn't make sense. It's not, I mean, it's not useful.
Right.
So they don't do much with it. It's usually all automated bans from either their anti-cheat, or if you automatically type in some sort of profanity, you get banned instantaneously as well, and then the team killing bans. So it's mostly automated bans. It's nothing really that gets reviewed much by real people, which is kind of unfortunate because that results in a lot of false bans, like I said, with potential trolling. That'll result in a ton of false bans.
Well, what can you do?
Right.
But I believe our live stream has come to an end.
I believe so too.
We've run out of time. Gerard,
have.
I want to thank you for being on the show.
I want to thank you for having me.
Oh, anytime. You just come right in. Door's always open.
All right.
But we may not always be filming. So if you kind of sit here in the dark with no lights on and no one's in here, you might be branded as a weirdo.
I already am.
Then we need to talk. Oh my God. Anyways, everybody, thanks for joining us again. We'll pick up next week at 2:30 to 3:30. Feel free to subscribe to get alerts when we do go live. And you make sure you have yourself a great weekend.